What if I told you that one of the greatest stories ever told was not written by Hollywood, not invented by a screenwriter, and not born in a Disney animation studio? What if I told you it happened 800 years ago in the red dust of West Africa under a blazing sun? And it starred a boy who couldn't even walk, a boy who was laughed at, mocked, cast out, a boy who was never supposed to survive, let alone rule. But here's the thing about destiny. It doesn't ask for your permission. This is the true story of Sundiata Keita, the Lion King, the real Lion King. And once you hear it, you will never see that name the same way again. Hit that subscribe button, because heroes like this deserve to be remembered. Year 1217. West Africa, the Kingdom of Kangaba, a small but proud Mandinka kingdom nestled near the bend of the mighty Niger River. The air smells of earth and fire, the sound of drums echoes through the savannah at night, and the people, they believe in prophecy. The king of Kangaba, Magan Konfata, known as Magan the Handsome, is visited one day by a wandering hunter, a prophet. And the prophet says something extraordinary. Your greatest son will not come from your most beautiful wife. He will come from an ugly woman, but do not be fooled by what your eyes see. This son will shake the world. The king never forgot those words, so when two hunters arrived at his court one day, bringing with them a woman described as having a hunched back and monstrous eyes, something stirred inside him. He married her. Her name was Sogolon, and soon she gave birth to a son. They named him Sundiata, Lion Prince, hungering lion. But little did anyone know that this lion cub could not stand up. As the years passed, Sundiata crawled on all fours. Other children ran and played. Sundiata watched from the ground. The king's first wife, Sasuma, mocked him openly. She sneered at his mother. She called the boy useless. What kind of king, she whispered to anyone who would listen, cannot even lift himself from the dirt? Those words cut deep, deeper than any blade. But Sundiata watched and waited, and somewhere inside that fragile, crawling body, a lion was learning to roar. The king died. And just like that, everything changed. Sasuma's son, Dankaran Tuman, seized the throne, and Sasuma, filled with hatred, turned her venom on Sundiata and his mother. The mockery became cruelty, the cruelty became unbearable. One day, Sogolon needed baobab leaves for cooking, a simple thing, a mother's simple need. But Sasuma, dripping with contempt, sent her servants to deliver the leaves with a sneer. A beggar must beg, she said. And something broke open inside Sundiata. He called for an iron rod, the heaviest one they had. He planted it into the ground, and for the first time in his life, he gripped it with both hands, and he pushed. The earth shook, the iron rod bent, and Sundiata Keita stood up. His first steps were described, even 800 years later, as giant steps. Not stumbling, not uncertain, giant. From that moment, Sasuma knew. She knew she had made a terrible mistake. She had let the lion live. And now the lion could walk. Not long after, Sundiata and his mother were driven into exile, banished, sent away to wander foreign kingdoms with nothing but each other. And no one expected that this exile would be the making of a legend. Exile is a brutal teacher, but Sundiata was a brilliant student. As he wandered from kingdom to kingdom across West Africa, from Mema to Ouagadougou, he didn't beg. He learned. He trained. He hunted. He forged alliances. He became so skilled a hunter, so fearless in battle, that people began to call him by a new name, Jata, Lion. Meanwhile, back home, a darkness had descended on his people. A warlord king named Soumaoro Kante, the king of Soso, had swept through the Mandinka lands like a storm. Soumaoro was not merely a conqueror, he was feared as a sorcerer. A man so terrifying that even enemy kings trembled at his name. He had slaughtered 11 of Sundiata's brothers. He had enslaved the people. He had crushed the spirit of an entire civilization. And then, a delegation arrived at Sundiata's feet in exile. Elders, warriors, mothers, all of them with one message, wrapped in desperation. Only you can save us. Please, come home. Sundiata looked at his mother looked at him, and the Lion King made his choice. He assembled an army from the kingdoms that had sheltered him. He forged alliances with 12 chieftains who had suffered under Soumaoro's iron fist. His own sister, the brave Nana Triban, risked everything to uncover Soumaoro's one weakness, and whispered it to her brother. In 1235, on the plains of Kirina, the two armies met. The battle was fierce, it was brutal, it was the kind of moment where history holds its breath. But Sundiata knew Soumaoro's secret, and with one perfectly aimed poisoned arrow, the Sorcerer King fell. The Soso army crumbled, the enslaved rose, the drums began to beat again. And Sundiata Keita was declared Mansa, King of Kings, Emperor. The Mali Empire had been born. Now here is where many people expect the story to end. The hero wins. Roll credits. But Sundiata's greatest achievement was not the battle, it was what he did after. He rebuilt the destroyed city of Niani and made it the glittering capital of his new empire. He opened trade routes stretching from the Sahara all the way to the sea, making Mali flow with gold, salt, and copper. The empire grew so wealthy under him and his descendants that it would eventually be called one of the richest civilizations in human history. But even more stunning than the gold was the charter. In 1235, right after his victory at Kirina, Sundiata gathered his people and proclaimed the Manden Charter, also known as the Kurukan Fuga. 800 years ago, in the heart of West Africa, this man declared the sanctity of human life, the right to education, food security for every person, women's rights, the abolition of slavery. 7 centuries before the Emancipation Proclamation, UNESCO today recognizes it as one of humanity's great intangible cultural heritages. This was not just a warrior. This was a visionary, a philosopher king, a builder of civilizations. And the story didn't stop with him. His grandnephew would become Mansa Musa, the man historians call the wealthiest individual who ever lived. A man so rich that when he walked through Egypt on a pilgrimage, he crashed the entire gold market of the medieval world. All of that started with a boy who couldn't walk. Sundiata Keita died around 1255. The exact cause is still a mystery. Some say he drowned crossing the Sankarani River. Some say a stray arrow at a celebration. No one knows for certain. But here is what we do know. His story never died. For 800 years, generation after generation of griots, the oral storytellers of West Africa, kept his legend alive, kept his words breathing, kept his name echoing across the savannah. And then in 1994, a certain animated movie came out. A lion cub, whose father died, whose throne was stolen, who lived in exile, who came back to reclaim his kingdom. Sound familiar? Disney said it was inspired by Shakespeare's Hamlet. But scholars around the world noticed something else entirely. The real Lion King had been telling his own story for 8 centuries. Think about that for a moment. A boy born disabled, in a time when weakness meant death. A boy mocked, exiled, forgotten. A boy who stood up, not for revenge, not for power, but for his mother's dignity. And from that single act of love, an empire was born. If there is one thing Sundiata Keita teaches us, it is this: your greatest moment will not come when life is easy. It will come when everything has been taken from you, when the world says you cannot stand, When the voices around you say, "You do not belong," that is exactly when you plant your iron rod, grip it with both hands, and rise. The griots say his name still echoes across the Niger River. And now, you've heard it too. Sundiata Keita, the Lion of Sogolon, the real Lion King. If this story moved you, hit that like button and share it with someone. Who needs to hear it today? Drop a comment below and let me know what you think about this incredible story. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, stay curious and never stop believing in miracles.